Joining me now at this year's OHL priority selection is CHL and TSN commentator Victor Findlay. Victor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Joel.
I last saw you at the OHL Cup a few weeks ago. What were your overall thoughts on this year's performance?
Yeah, fun tournament. I always love coming back and getting to call the final game of that, and just kind of having an eye on minor hockey and the GTHL all season long. So that final at the OHL Cup is always very unpredictable. This year, JRC really kind of shut it down and didn't give the Vaughan Kings a whole lot of opportunity to get back into things when they got ahead in that final game. So maybe not the most dramatic of finishes in the final this year, but I think just the lead up to that point with, the semi-finalists, Waterloo and Peterborough in the mix as well with Vaughan, and what a comeback for them in the tournament. I mean, the unpredictability was very much on display in the lead up to that final. So always a fun tournament, a great event, and great to see it back at the Gardens again.
We didn't get to see him in the deeper rounds of the tournament, but Matthew Schaefer was selected first overall by the Erie Otters this year. How do you think he'll further add to the team?
Well, it's an exciting young group in Erie, and you look at where that team was 5, 6, 7 years ago, and when they had the DeBrinkets, the Radishes, McDavids, and Strome, and that was really one of the best runs for a junior hockey team in terms of just raw talent. But they also had results too, getting all the way to a Memorial Cup final in 2017, and since then, it's been a lot of missed playoff appearances, and this is an Erie team that's looking for results. And, I think there's a lot to be excited about with some of the young players they've gotten. Malcolm Spence, who was just a first round pick a season ago. I've always been a huge fan of Spencer Sova. I think he's going to continue to improve. And now you got Matthew Schaefer on that defensive side of things as well. So I think Erie have strong players in most positions. Kerry Terrance as well is who's draft eligible this season, just scored 30 in the OHL. And I think he's going to be a massive player for them moving forward as well. So Matthew Schaefer, as a 16-year-old defenseman going into the league next year is going to be another piece of what looks to be an intriguing puzzle with the Erie Otters as they try and get back to what they had a few seasons ago.
Taking a look at our league right now, you're calling the OHL Championship Series on TSN this year. What are your thoughts on the playoffs this year? Has there been any surprises for you?
Yeah, I mean, the junior playoffs are always really fun for me to watch. I think we're really getting into the interesting part of the playoffs now across the entire CHL and the Western League and the QMJHL included. But the OHL playoffs this year, I think, have been among the most exciting we've seen in recent years. And it doesn't really surprise me because for whatever reason, it seemed like, especially the Western Conference in the OHL this year, from the start of the season, nobody really had a great idea who was going to be good and who was going to fall back. I think, Guelph was a team that came into the season with huge expectations. I don't think people expected Windsor to be as good as they were in the regular season, challenging for the 1 seed early on. And then it felt like Erie and Sault Ste. Marie had a pretty good chance still to make the playoffs until we kind of got past the trade deadline and they made their intentions known with moving some players. So I think the West, I mean, we saw an 8-1 upset, with Kitchener over Windsor. And I guess as unpredictable as you might think that is, Kitchener was obviously a really good team this year and now ousted in the second round of the playoffs by London. So I think the Western Conference for me has been supremely exciting. And now it's really getting good in the East too, because you've got Peterborough and the Ottawa 67s. That's been a great series. And so is Barrie North Bay. I mean, they've been to overtime, 3 times, the first 4 games of the series. So very, very exciting in both conferences, and excited to see what we end up with for an OHL finals this year.
Some of our guys who have exited the playoffs already are in a completely different country right now. You're calling the U18 World Juniors happening in Switzerland. Canada started yesterday off to a rough start, but bounced back this morning. What have been your thoughts on the team this year?
Well, yeah, obviously not a great start for Team Canada with the 8-0 loss to Sweden. They rebounded pretty nicely with an 8-0 win over Germany. But it's so hard to predict and project this tournament because you don't really know, what you're going to get in terms of team and in terms of players until, pretty much right before the tournament. And now there's, still some teams like the Prince George Cougars got ousted the other night by the Seattle Thunderbirds. So there's some, good talent there. But in terms of the OHL players, I mean, it's always a great opportunity. I love watching this tournament because it's not necessarily all the best players from this age group, because some of them are still with their teams going deep into the CHL playoffs. So it's a great opportunity to get a bit of a peek into the future and maybe a little bit deeper into the draft and see some players, guys like, Porter Martone, though I think he's a double end or an underage player, being a late birthday, so he's not eligible to the 2024 draft. But getting to see some players get into different roles that they might not have necessarily been in with their OHL or junior hockey teams. So that's always fun, and it's always really tough for these teams to come together. I think Canada showed that in the first game. Obviously, it went off the rails early for them against Sweden, but this is a tournament when you're bringing in players from so many different regions, so many different leagues. It's very difficult to get them on the same page, and especially when you're taking on teams like Sweden or Latvia or USA or Finland, and a lot of those players have been playing together for years, whether it's the under 16 teams, the under 17 teams, and of course this tournament as well. So that's always a challenge, but it's fun to watch it come together.
Finally, with the priority selection upon us, do you think we can expect to see a strong draft class this year?
I do. I think, especially with the forwards, I think when the first round is all said and done, we're going to see a lot more, I think, high-end forwards come out of this draft. And of course, there will be top-end defensemen and goaltenders as well, like there are every year. But I think it's a little bit deeper with the forwards. And because of that, I think there could be some good draft picks too, as deep as the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds as well. So I think especially for those teams that are looking to stock up a little bit with forwards and try and add some goal scoring, add some punch to their offense down the road, I think it's a particularly good year for the draft for them.
Well, Vic, thank you so much for your insight today. I look forward to seeing you in the playoffs.
My pleasure, Joelle. Thanks.